We've got some activity. Names are moving around in the transfer portal and for early signing day. These are the names you need to look for.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's Bet Online where the game starts. Also, thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications, and participate in the conversation by commenting down below. And, of course, voting the video itself. We'd appreciate it very much. Anyway, these are some names you need to watch this week. This is the last weekend before early signing day. The transfer portal is starting to kick off. There's probably about 30 days left in the transfer portal window, so it's going to heat up over the next little bit. Now, the first thing I want to say is Adari Haulcy is a safety from New Mexico. We've heard him in multiple places. According to On3, he's visiting at the moment. And according to Mike Huseman earlier this week, he talked about him as a possibility. He also talked about Aaron Carter. He also talked about John Saunders. So those are names that you probably should look to pop off because Mike generally knows what he's talking about in the transfer portal. Now, if you look at the message boards and on the sites and all the people that are tasked with covering the transfer portal, God bless you, honestly, because that would be just unbelievably tiring work. Apparently, Chris Marshall and Adari Haulcy are also on campus along with Trey Harris. That's according to On3. They reported that. So those are the names right now that you need to look in the transfer portal that you should go with. Adari Haulcy, a larger body, tank-built safety. He's somebody that runs around at 215, 220 pounds. I think he's a bigger guy. I do not know much about New Mexico Lobo football, but he is from Fort Bend, Texas and Missouri City, Texas, and went to high school with Chris Marshall. That's the reason they're together. It's almost like a rare transfer portal type package deal. And Chris Marshall is on campus and doing whatever they said. And apparently the visit went very well, from what I've heard. And I've gotten a couple of DMs about it over the last day or so, and apparently it's going fairly well. But when it comes to the intricacies and all that, everybody is going to be tight-lipped, so we're going to rely on Twitter, we're going to rely on innuendo, and we're going to rely on, yes, sources. So we'll see what's going on with Chris Marshall and Adari Haulcy from Missouri City, Texas. Chris Marshall was the number 25 player in the country last year, number 3 wide receiver. He's a good, talented player. He's worth taking a risk on, even though he had some issues at Texas A&M. He was part of that Texas A&M class that is so well known at this point. But he has a chance to move on and do some things as well. Now, John Saunders, 6'4" cornerback out of Miami, Ohio. I think they have a bowl game against UAB Friday. I do not know if John Saunders is playing on it, if he's opted out. I mean, he entered the transfer portal, but he might play in that game, and we'll see if things open up after that. I believe that's the Bahamas Bowl maybe against UAB, the Fighting Trent Dilfers. We'll see what goes on. John Saunders, remember, Ole Miss is not trying to replace DeAndre Prince, which would be a hard thing to do in the transfer portal. They're trying to replace Miles Battle, which is a depth piece, a good piece. I'm not saying he's not good, but he's not a starter. So you have your starters back. You're just trying to build them up behind them. So we'll see exactly how that goes. And apparently Trey Harris is on campus as well, according to On3. And All-Conference USA wide receiver, we talked about him yesterday. We've talked about him earlier in the week. This has been probably the first push of Ole Miss players in the transfer portal is Trey Harris. I think there's a chance you could see over the course of this weekend, any number of things happen. Either none of them commit or 2 or 3 of them pop. So we'll see exactly how this goes because it could happen at any moment. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is apparently Marcel Reed is going to go through with his visit to Texas A&M. He had an in-home visit with Jimbo Fisher early in the week. He posted that on Twitter. Now, I am standing by what I said earlier. I do not think there's going to be much drama, but there's going to be a little bit of drama. And when you're dealing with Texas A&M, the amount of money that they are throwing around over there makes you a little bit nervous. So we'll see exactly how this goes. I expect Marcel Reed to be the backup quarterback for Ole Miss next year. I expect Marcel Reed to get here in May or whatever and do that. Ole Miss honestly might need to find a grad transfer, since Marcel's not due to get here until May, to fill that role for a year, potentially. But you're looking at a second level type quarterback type position. So somebody that can just hold a clipboard, come in, and we'll see what happens. But Marcel Reed should be here in May, because he's going to play high school basketball, even though he's going to sign Wednesday. So early signing day, we are going to do our live streams. Hopefully we have Marcel Reed, Suntarine Perkins, Bryson Sanders, all of those guys. Ole Miss currently has 6 or 7 4-star blue chip players that are committed, and even more if you count 4 stars on other sites. Like I said, I remember a time in Ole Miss football where getting 7 4-star players in a 25-man class would be cause for celebration. Now, you're getting 7 4-stars in a 12-man class. This is uncharted territory. That with the transfer portal, they have a chance to really continue to upgrade the roster. And the strength that Lane Kiffin has had at Ole Miss, and we can talk about all the off the field stuff we want to, the strength for him has been roster building. He improved the talent of the roster from 2019, which had 18 4-star players out of high school, or 19 4-star players, to like 30 or 31 last year. And basically, when players go into the portal, I mean, you have guys like Damon Clowney, you have Miles Battle. Those guys are going to go out. They're trying to upgrade them. So them going out, they're trying to upgrade the ones that are leaving, recruit really well, because, I mean, that's the lifeblood of your program. But they've done a really good job at roster building, and I'm looking forward to the next 30 days with early signing day and the transfer portal window and things like that, going to the late signing day. So now until February should be a nice little sprint for Ole Miss football and Lane Kiffin. It should be a lot of fun. Anyway, so I do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends of every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball to World Cup, which, by the way, Sunday is the final for the World Cup. We've got it all on betonline.net. If you can see down below, Ole Miss currently a 3-point favorite over the Texas Tech Red Raiders in the Texas Bowl. Over-under is currently set at 69.5 points. The game will be at 8 o'clock Central on ESPN December 28th. That's my anniversary, by the way. So if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Ole Miss, their men's basketball team struggled Wednesday night. And I want to take a second and what is going wrong with men's basketball? Because the pieces are there. I love Miles Burns. I've talked about that over and over again. I even like the way he played in that game. But like we have talked about, this team has the ability to go into a shot desert. And what I mean by that is exactly what started the first 9 minutes of that game, to where UCF got up 21-0. After that, Ole Miss played even to better than evil. It was a repeat of the Memphis game. But these shot deserts and the the lack to get shots made are a problem for Ole Miss basketball at the moment. They have Matt Murrell, good shooter, but he almost doesn't seem like an alpha. DeSean Ruffin is kind of supposed to be the alpha, but he started off and had a little bit of a shocker, so Kermit had to quickly reposition and figure out what he was going to do. And he started going with like Amari Abram and Malik Ewan and Josh Mbala, those guys on the floor at the same time, because you needed to match up with the physicality, because just like the Memphis game, physicality was completely able to take Ole Miss out of what they were doing. And like we've told you many times, when they're not making shots, they're not as good defensively. So it becomes like a death spiral. And the next thing you know, you look up, it's 21-0. And honestly looked like those old games in the, like, I'm going to talk to Tim Thomas in a minute. It like you go into Rupp Arena and all of a sudden it's 31-7. And you're like, what just happened? But it looked like that. It looked like Ed Murphy days at Ole Miss basketball. And I'm not 100% sure what is wrong, because Ole Miss has good players. And you can take this for whatever you want to take it, because I'm not going to go super negative, and I'm going to try and find positives all through the season. But right now, this is a problem for Ole Miss basketball. And moving forward with Tennessee less than 2 weeks away. Alabama, a little over 2 weeks away. Then you got Mississippi State. It's going to be a little bit easier than the first two. Not easy, though. They're a good basketball team. Auburn, a good basketball team. Arkansas, good basketball team. Kentucky, good basketball team. You see what I'm getting at here. So are we going down the same path that we always go down? That is my question of this moving forward. And I don't really know the answer to that. We are better than we were last year. That's almost completely obvious. But how is this going to look? It's like I joked on Monday or whenever it was, Miss Cleo, whenever I brought that reference out there. Everybody wants to watch a game, take a data point, and take it to the end of the season. So people are going to talk about the UCF game and just completely take the data point all the way until April, and it's going to be doom and gloom, and in their mind they're going to be, 7-27 or something like that. But that you can't do that. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. But is there going to be enough ups to get Ole Miss where they want to be? Because Ole Miss has played 3 teams in the top 60 in the KenPom and the net. And Ole Miss has lost all of them. And they've lost all of them by double digits, I believe. That Oklahoma game might have been just below double digits. If it is, forgive me. But right now, what you can say about Ole Miss basketball is they really beat up bad basketball teams. If you are a good basketball team, you kind of beat up Ole Miss. And that is the situation we're dealing with Ole Miss basketball right now. It's kind of like that 8-8 NFL team that you're perpetually getting bad draft picks and you can't really get into the playoffs. That's the cycle that Ole Miss basketball is in right now. I don't know what the answer is to get out of it. Some people are going to go over and over about firing the coach, and I completely get that. But I'm not willing to get there yet. I still want to see an SEC season. Ole Miss could still win 10 or 11 games in the SEC, and everybody's like, how did this team lose to Central Florida? I mean, that's still on the table. But until they don't do it, I don't want to jump the gun on something like that. But I understand people that might already be there because, like I said, 3 years ago, people were on the fire Kermit train, and they're going to carry that to the death. I understand that, but that's not the way that I follow sports, and I just want to see what goes on with it. DeSean Ruffin, like I said, he kind of had a shocker. This is the second game where he just got physical, got manhandled a little bit. And because of that, kind of took him out of his game. He's going to have to get back into that DeSean Ruffin of February of 2022 shape. People might forget he's still like 9 months separated from an ACL injury. So we're going to talk to Tim Thomas, and he's going to give his thoughts on Valpo, UCF and looking ahead to Temple. But before we got to Tim Thomas, I did want to talk to this because I didn't want, Tim to be all doom and gloom in what's going on. I figured I would jump on that grenade for him. But we'll talk to him in just a second. Anyway, I do want to let you know that this show is brought to you by the NHTSA and their Drive Sober Tsunami. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes too many, and that evening comes to an end and people start to head out. You start to think about calling for a ride, but nah, you live nearby. You'll make it home, no big deal. What are the odds of you getting pulled over anyway? And even so, what is the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risk of drunk driving. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, they still don't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. In the age of Uber, there's really no excuse not to do it. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm here with Tim Thomas, and honestly, we're going to talk a little bit about that UCF debacle on Wednesday night. We're going to look ahead to Temple. And Tim, this team has a problem with slow starts. It's absolutely crazy, but being down 21-0, I don't know if I've ever seen that in basketball.
Yeah, it's very embarrassing, very disappointing. I'm not sure if it's coaching issues that just can't get them going. I think they'll work on that, the next day or so before they play Temple, or they don't have captains. They don't have leadership like, Elko in baseball. And it just seems like it's not there. They get out there the first few minutes and they're not ready. They're not, they did good against Valpo because they had some really good practices. And I thought Kermit would make more changes, but it was very disappointing. 21-0. I've never seen such a thing.
Yeah. I'm sitting here. I said earlier in the earlier segment, it reminded me like of the mid 80s going up to Rupp Arena, and you look up and it's 30-16 or 30-15. And you're like, how did this happen? How did this get out of control so instantly? And to have that happen on your home floor, man, that is a really, really bad look.
Yeah, as we talked about, home field advantage, football, basketball, baseball, any sports that has fans, it's usually a 10-point difference when you're at home to get started. Like they went up to Memphis, and you say, okay, new environment, freshman guys, and they had old guys, and we saw how good you talked about it. We see how good Memphis is, and evidently UCF may be pretty good too. I mean, I have to admit it; they really played well. They're in the same conference with Memphis and Temple coming up Saturday, so they're pretty decent. They had a couple guys that really played well, very impressive. The Kelly guy kept knocking down them threes. He got a lot of offensive rebounds and then throw it out and get another three when we were right down to 4 points, and then just couldn't quite pull it off. I was encouraged that he put a lot of new guys in. I was encouraged with Ewing and came in and blocked 5 shots, which was really neat, and several rebounds, had 10 points, and then Mabala. We'd all been waiting on him, and he came in and made a big difference. 18 points, I think 7 rebounds. And he really is a physical specimen inside. So hopefully he's got his physical attributes back going. He had a knee issue over the summer, so hopefully he's better. So hopefully, and with a practice or two from Kermit, I think he's going to try some new people. The way I saw his post-game press conference, I believe he's going to try some different people, kind of shake things up and see what happens.
Yeah, because honestly, we had some, for lack of a better term, no-shows for the game. Some players that are normally really key players that, for whatever reason, just couldn't perform.
It's hard to explain. Everyone, players have to get themselves up for the game. They have to check the scouting report, watch the films that they show, and go through the scenarios during practice to see what the other team runs. Everybody does that. It's just a one-on-one, man to man. We all have to take care of our own self. You have to get yourself up. But I was discouraged badly. You talk about Miles Burns. He did okay. I think he had 3 points. He didn't play, like he normally did to make it a difference on the defensive. Robert Allen, 0. Normally, he seemed like he's a possible captain, but he didn't show up. Ruffin, 2 points. Last minute of the game, I believe he got 2 points. He had 6 assists, which was great. But a couple other guys, just Brakefield, no show. I hate to keep harping on him, but it's just, inconsistencies of some of these players. And Kermit, they asked him in the interview, he's just trying players. Why did you go with Ewing, or why did you go with this guy, that guy? He's just throwing people out there, and hopefully one will stick. You call it someone really step up. And he had a couple do that. Mbala and Ewing did that, along with Murrell. He did his normal thing, which he got it. We asked for 20, he got 21. So I was very glad to see that from him. But some of these other guys that we mentioned, it didn't happen. They just didn't show.
Yeah, I don't understand how you could start off a game and go 9 minutes without a point. I don't know if I've ever seen that in college basketball, and it's just, I don't know if it's a reliance on the three-point shot. I don't know if they're just not going hard to the basket because maybe UCF is doing that Virginia thing where everybody sinks into the paint and just guards the rim with everything they have. Maybe they just weren't making but it was just bizarre.
Yeah, there's a couple of weaknesses that you see real quick. I hate to, harp on Ruffin, but he's short, right? He's short. He's 5'9", he's from Saunders. And if you saw it during the press, he really has trouble with these tall, rangy guys getting the ball over him. He's going to have to use the bounce pass. A couple of times on the press, they tip the ball and they got the ball put in. Some of those things just kind of add up. It's something as a defensive guy, it's something we'll have to watch. He's going to really have to hustle and try to keep his guy from getting the ball. If his guy gets the ball, it's over. They can shoot a 3, they can take to the hole. He's just so small. But he can make a difference on offensive end. He did last night, but hopefully he will. I remember the day when I was guarding Sam Bowie or Kevin McHale. If I could keep him from getting it, hey, we're good. Great. Someone else shoot. But if they got it, it's over, man. It's over. They can, they were big, tall, and they could shoot. And that's the same thing with Ruffin. He's a short, and he'll have to overcome that. And this team, the other team, will use that against us every time they play us.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at MRA, they've got a commitment from Josh Hubbard, who is a little bit bigger, but not much bigger than DeSean Ruffin. So he's another spark plug type player, super athlete. Before we move on to start talking Temple, you mentioned about Kevin McHale. What was it like guarding Kevin McHale? I mean, what was going through your mind when you were actually doing that?
The only chance, as I said, was to keep him from getting it. He was around 6'11", had long arms. I know they used to say he could tie a shoe standing straight up. I don't know if that's true or not. I never asked him. But he had a big chest. If you not notice, he had a big chest, and the way he kind of walked around, kind of gangly. But, man, if he got the ball, it was tough. He could take it to the hole. He could shoot the 10, 15-footer. Just an excellent athlete. But that was my only chance. And was to keep from getting. I knew how to face guard him and knew how to get around and keep from getting and try to poke it away or try to make a steal. But he was a dynamic player. Sam Bowie, he was 7'2". I guarded probably 10 or 15 players that was 7 foot or more. Seemed like we had more 7-footers back then. I'm not sure about the water or what it was, but Sam Bowie, same thing. Keep it from getting it, great. But if he gets it, there's no way to stop him. If he's inside close, just no way to stop him. But this team here also, I want to mention 3-point shooting as you did. Not good. I'm not sure Murrell can really shoot it. I believe Abram may have hit one. I think Mbala stepped out and hit one. But everybody else, it's just not happening. And the offensive side, as we talked about several weeks ago, is an issue. Our offensive, Kermit went out, and got these four portal guys, defensive juggernauts, defense. But as we have seen, Mbala came through a little bit last night, but several of the other ones just not. Miles Burns, boy, he's a hustler. I love him to death too. But a shooter, he was like 1 for 9, 1 for 5. 0 for 5 on the 3-point. It's not going to get it in the SEC. We got Temple coming up, as you mentioned, then UNA, and then University of Tennessee Volunteers. So wake-up call. It's at home, which you'd like to think we would be ready. And then we got Alabama, who is really good right now. So things will have to change drastically, defensive-wise and offensive-wise, for us to have a chance, really.
Yeah, it's an interesting, and teams that are super physical teams like Memphis, UCF was super physical, and I mean, they did. It seems like our guys just kind of almost backed down because I don't know if there's an alpha on this team. They got a bunch of role players and a bunch of guys that can do a bunch of different things, but there's not an alpha on this team. Just give me the ball. And I will go make it happen. And Ruffin's supposed to be that guy. I mean, that's the one we assumed would be that guy. But to this point, it is not materialized.
Yeah, your point guard, kind of like a quarterback, dart, you think that they're the one. He started him last night, and I think that was the intention, to really put this team together with these 5 guys he feels are the best. But they pressed, and we kind of got behind the 8 ball. We couldn't get it going. Couldn't ever get it going. The offensive wasn't able to work. So Ruffin, for whatever reason, he didn't show either. He's a sophomore, probably 19 years old, but that's what Kermit expects him to do. The Josh Hubbard guy that's coming next year. He's a small guy, but they're really quick and get to the hole quick. But we got behind so quick. We got behind because of the press and other issues that we just couldn't score. And we never could get our offense going, and 7 minutes in, 21-0, which was totally ridiculous. Actually, back in the days when I was coaching 8 and under, 10 and under, that was something like that. This is, really, as you said, it's ridiculous that this could happen at a major college.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn the page to the Temple Owls. Now, the second NCAA tournament game was against John Chaney and the Temple Owls when Rob Evans was coaching Ole Miss. Keith Carter and all them went. There was a little bit of a rivalry between Temple and Ole Miss at that point because the next year I think they came to Oxford and Ole Miss whipped them pretty good. But after John Chaney, Temple has kind of taken a step back. Tell me about this group of Owls.
Yeah, their coach is Aaron McKee. He played back in the day for Temple. Really good player, played pro for several years. I looked at their record, 6-5, not really impressive. But they beat Villanova, which in the past years they've been really good. I'm not sure if they're really good at all. I was listening to Derek Horn. He was formerly from Ole Miss. He's up at Temple now. I think he's associate AD the other day. Someone interviewed him. And he was saying they're really starting to play well now. So that's not good for us. But they had early games. They struggled, but now they're really starting to put it together. So they'll be down here at the pavilion, really wanting to show out and realize that UCF just put us down real hard. So they'll be ready for us. But I got faith in Kermit. He's been through this before. He's wondering exactly what to do, but he's going to try some different folks, try to shake things up. He plays, like 13 guys a game, but he has not found. I don't know if it's a portal situation. People have asked the portal. They just don't jive, just don't get together. It seems like it's not meshing. That may be some of the issues. But we talked about no captains. It's really stepping up and getting their attentions and maybe yelling at them and waking them up because they were asleep the first 7 minutes. They looked like they were asleep, and they got so far behind we couldn't catch back up. But Temple, I got a good feeling we're going to play well against them. We got them at home. I think we're going to come out with a different mindset, and I got to believe Kermit's had a couple of practices, or he will have a couple of practices, and he's going to have a new group out there, hopefully with a little more toughness, because Temple's going to bring it. They saw what Memphis did. They're going to bring it, so we're going to have to be ready.
Yeah, and much like every team sport, whenever you prove you are susceptible to something, everybody is going to do it moving forward. So Ole Miss can expect physical games until they figure out how to handle those physical teams.
Yeah, our guards, as young as they are, that's where it's going to have to come from. Abram, Ruffin, of course, and Murrell. We're going to have to learn to beat this press and take it to our advantage. Beat the press and go down and score. They'll quit the press. If you score, it's over. Same thing when Kermit runs a 1-3-1 trap. If the other team gets it to the corner and you keep hitting threes, he's going to stop that trap. That's the deficit of the problem with a 1-3-1 trap. If you get it to the corners, if you got a couple of 3-point shooter guys, that's the trouble. You got to get them. You got to tip the ball there to half court like Burns was doing. They did it a little bit last night, so it's definitely going to work. Every team works on it. Every time anybody plays Ole Miss, they work on the 1-3-1 trap. But some people don't have as much luck. So I think he'll keep trying that. He'll keep working on that. And I'm hoping he'll give Ewing a chance inside. He's at least a big guy that can block shots. And he's also offensive minded, and he can really score inside. So him and Mbala, really impressed with him. He's a big old stout looking fellow. I think he's getting over his injury. I think he's got his wind back. He looked like he played several minutes, and I was surprised. So I think you got a new lineup going to get started, new energy. Hopefully a couple of those guys can give them the juice and get off to a good start Saturday against Temple.
Yeah, the 5 right now that I'm looking at and what I would do, I would Ewan and Mbala. I would have Miles Burns out there, and I think Miles Burns needs to develop to be the alpha. He needs to be the one yelling. He needs to be the one. He's the hustle guy. His effort is never going to be questioned. He needs to be the guy that's doing that. And then you have Murrell at the 2, and then you alternate Abram and Ruffin at the 1. That's my opinion at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good lineup. I like that. And hopefully McInnes will come in and help some. He's just not very offensive minded. He'll dunk whenever once in a while or get a loose ball and dunk it, and he's good at that. He blocks the shots pretty well. Kuba is a good guy too, but he's not really offensive minded. He's not really good at that. So hopefully Malik Ewing, even though he's a freshman, you would hope that he will come through and do his part each and every game. I could tell he got a little winded last night, and they had to take him out a few times. But a lot of potential, great potential. And like you said, Ruffin has got to step up. He's got to show up every game. And Robert Allen, the guy that comes in, the 6th guy, he's got to get the guys going. And Miles Burns, they got to get this train running if we're going to do anything, or it's not looking good.
All right. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. It's Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Tim, thank you so much for stopping by today. Hopefully against Temple they get it turned around, but if not, we'll talk to you again next week about everything that's going on with Ole Miss basketball, man.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.